This week, Utah is set to take the stage at Big 12 Media Day for the first time since joining the conference. On today's show, we're talking about what Kyle Whittingham is going to reveal, as well as diving into the commitment of a wide receiver that Utah just landed. All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. We love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media. We can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X today. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On College. That's all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. My name is J.T. Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by producer for KSL Sports, Alex Napoles. And Alex, Big 12 Media Days are here, which is crazy because it's just another sign of like, hey, this is actually happening. And obviously it's been in the works for a while, but to see Utah like in a Big 12 media event with Baylor, Texas Tech, and Kansas State, it's just going to be weird. So we're talking about that. We'll talk about what the players are going to reveal on tomorrow's show. Utah will take the stage on July 9th. We'll hear from Kyle Whittingham, Cam Rising, Junior Tavuna, Karene Reed, and also Brant Keithy will all be up there. Today we'll talk about Coach Whitt. Tomorrow the players. Also got to talk about the wide receiver that Utah landed, and there were some pretty wild comments made over on a certain BYU network that I think are worth discussing at the very end of the show. But starting with Kyle Whittingham, I am really excited to hear from Coach Whitt, and more so than normal in a press conference like this, because he doesn't like to reveal much. But he has to talk about the fact that Morgan Scalley was named the head coach's successor in waiting. More than likely, he won't reveal anything. But because it's Kyle Whittingham and he does a great job of playing these things off, Alex. But I'm still very curious to hear how he answers the questions that are going to come about his own future. When you name a head coach in waiting, there are obviously a lot of questions about how much longer you're going to do this. I'm quite interested to see what he's going to say about that.
And I mean, he's mentioned it before, you know, in even if it was in joking or whatever, he has mentioned it before that, you know, he's a lot closer to being done than he is to starting, right? And you know, you make this transition to the Big 12. It would not surprise me if Utah has a very, very successful first season of the Big 12 if Kyle Whittingham just decides to call it then and there, you know?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what he talks about and kind of what he says about Morgan Scalley. And like you mentioned, he's very good at keeping the cards close to his chest. But if you really, sometimes you just really got to dig deep and hear what he says to really kind of pick up on some of the hints of what he's trying to put out, you know?
Yes, because there always is some truth and whatever is revealed and that nature. Like you can only lead things a certain way you want them for so long. There's going to be something that is usually said as much of a pro's pro as Kyle Whittingham is. So that's definitely the thing I'm the most interested in hearing from about Coach Whitt. I think what else I'm curious about, Alex, is just hearing about the health of the team, right? Or is there anyone else banged up coming in? He's not going to name names more than likely. And he's going to say, you know, Brant and Cam are good to go because they were going to go in the spring. We know that. You know, I expect him to give a positive. Lander, I don't think he played in the game, but he was active in spring ball practices and everything, if I do remember correctly. And if I did play in the game, I'm sorry, I forgot off the top of my head because it's the spring game. And as much as we enjoy it, it doesn't relate to these guys' health. So Lander playing in the spring game, which once again, 90% sure he didn't, doesn't pertain much to his overall health and availability as it relates to the spring. So, well, anyways, getting back on focus topic there. But I am curious to see if he divulges anything about the health of the team and says like, hey, are we all healthy 100%? Because we know what a big lasting imprint the injuries left on him last season, Alex. But outside of that, is there anything else you're really curious to hear Kyle Whittingham talk about at Big 12 Media Days?
To kind of just go off of what you said, I do think that, you know, between people inside the program, between us as media members and even the fans, man, there might be a little bit of PTSD from last season, right? Is Cam healthy? Is Cam not healthy? And so I do think health and injuries will be a big topic for Whittingham in this. And I'm curious to see, for me, I'm curious to see how Whittingham's going to handle the questions. Obviously, Utah was ranked number 1 in the Big 12 poll. There's going to be questions to I'm curious to see how he's going to handle the questions of, the high expectations, and because people are going to be asking, and it's also going to be curious to see the other schools and how they kind of receive Utah being that number one preseason rank, and for schools like Kansas State and Oklahoma State, who had tremendous seasons last year, see how they feel about Utah being ranked number one, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with the media days.
Yeah, I'm excited to witness that as well. Coach Whitt, I'm sure he'll talk about how, we don't pay attention to that stuff as far as I don't know if he'll say like we see ourselves as the underdog, but look, there are still, even though Utah was picked by the media, there are a lot of people, Big 12 schools in particular, their individual members who just think Utah's coming from a soft conference, the Pac-12, and some of the teams were, but people really discredit how hard the Pac was some of these last few years. And just because of that kind of West Coast bias in terms of people just not paying attention or thinking it's lesser than, I think there's a lot of people who really think that this Utah team is not going to be very good. I saw a Texas Tech fan in my comments last week mention, like, I wish we would have played Utah. And Texas Tech, look, you guys may beat Utah if you play them this fall. You would not be favored if you played Utah, because this Utah team has so much returning talent that has won and been successful at the highest levels. And I know it was a couple of years ago, but at least we forget this was a Utah team that nearly knocked off Ohio State in a Rose Bowl, was close in a game against Penn State, very well could have won it if Cam Rising doesn't get hurt. And I've said this many times on my show, I think Penn State probably would have gone on to win that game. But I think there's some perception out there, like people put so much stock into the bowl game where everyone opted out, and on top of the injuries Utah had, that just was not the Utah team. So that's a whole nother thing there. Last thing I'm very curious to see with Kyle Whittingham, there's some other slight things too, but he's going to be asked about the current state and the future of the Big 12. And his comments in the past have always gotten quite the reaction, whether it is him talking about like, hey, we're in the Big 12 now, like we'll see what happens. I think we're headed for super conferences. Like that always causes a stir. I am very curious to see what Kyle Whittingham says about that, because I am much more focused on this fall, like as terms of this show. I am more excited to see Kyle Whittingham talk about this team in 2024, as well as his own coaching future. But I know he's going to be asked about the future of the Big 12, and he's probably going to give an answer that some people are going to not love and probably run with, because I don't think he's going to say like Big 12 for life exactly.
I mean, hey, he's done it before, man. He's done it before where he's made those comments. We don't know what the future holds. We'll see. And I'm assuming that we'll hear something similar along those lines if he's asked those kinds of questions. And so I do think people, obviously because of the ever-changing nature of college football and the conferences and everything that's happened this last summer, people are going to latch on to those comments. So we'll see how much Kyle divulges into that.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting and fascinating to see everything that Kyle Whittingham reveals. Once again, we'll be talking about what we're curious to hear from the players on tomorrow's show. But in a moment, I want to talk about the newest wide receiver Utah was able to land. No, he wasn't five-star Jerome Miles, but Tavian McClain is McNair, is an incredible talent. And I do want to talk about him in a moment. I know I just butchered his name, but I promise I got some good notes on what I saw on film, and we're going to be discussing him in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you all about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes, our great friends at Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have great last-minute deals, all-in-price views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. There are so many fantastic features I love about Gametime, whether it's those last minute deals where you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concert, comedy, and theater events near you. How about zone deals where you save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seat? Or the seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what kind of a view you're getting for when you make your purchase. And speaking of the purchase, they have all-in pricing. The Togline feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. It's also that low price guarantee where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College, capital LO, and all of college is capitalized, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All righty, Alex. Coming back into this one, let's talk about a wide receiver commit that Utah was able to land in. 3-star wide receiver Tavian McNair, the 6'3", 180-pound wide receiver coming out of California, is a nice boost to the 2025 class that hadn't added a wide receiver yet. They've got some good athletes on there, but most of those guys projected to play on the defensive end at the moment. So you get Drew Clemens in there, the tight end, who's a guy who can bring in and potentially be your next pass-catching tight end of the future. But adding McNair is a guy that definitely excites me. When you turn on the tape, the things that stand out to me right away is the speed. Teams, you can tell the defensive back coaches on the other team say, whoever the DB, they tell him, hey, kid, don't let this guy get behind you. And McNair's speed is just that impressive that he is routinely still able to get behind him. Those long strides allow him to squeeze past defenders. He does a good job making adjustments on the ball. He just changes direction well, too. It's hard to track him. He's got the quick feet, too, can make contested catches. And I'm a big fan of this guy's game. I think this is another example of Alvis Whitted, who wanted to land this guy, doing a good job bringing in a quality get that I can see developing into a nice receiver for the University of Utah.
I'm right there with you, JT, man. This guy he's got good frame, like you mentioned, 6'3", 180 pounds. He's good vertically. He's got some good hands. I love his speed. And so he's got all the tools to be incredibly successful in a Utah offense. And I think it's huge for Utah to obviously get their first receiver commit, like we mentioned, off the board, get a receiver, get for this class, and to look forward to reboosting that receiver room for the future of this Utah offense.
And now that we have a chance to kind of see, Coach Whitted arrived up here in the summer, or maybe it was back in the spring. I think it was the spring of 2023. So he's here for the 23 season. So he got his toes wet, and now he's really been able to add some of his guys. And he got to do it a little bit last year, right? Bringing in David Washington, Zacharias Williams, another one that he brought in, but he's kind of continued to add some strong additions, right? Let's look at the transfer portal. Dorian Singer, Damian Alford, and Tayshawn Lyons. Utah's efforts to recruit the receiver position better don't happen without Coach Whitted. And this is another example of him grabbing a guy. And Lyons in particular, when you talk about David Washington, Tayshawn Lyons, and McNair, as well as the potential of landing Jerome Miles, I think, and that's once again without even mentioning the impact immediate guys that they added, Lyons could also be among them too. I just think it's really exciting that the current state of the Utah wide receiver position has guys in the present I expect to produce and guys in the future that I think have a chance to be real difference makers at the power forward level.
And I've heard it in the past, and I'm sure you've heard it too, is people have always criticized that Utah wide receiver room for being, not necessarily being the strongest position on the field for this Utah team. We hear it constantly, and I think the coaching staff has done an amazing job of kind of changing that narrative, bringing in big talents like Singer, like Lyons, who I'm right there with you. I think Lyons is going to be a very, very good pickup for this University of Utah team. And I feel like we're just going to continue to see them land these big recruits, not necessarily recruits of high stature that maybe we haven't seen in the past, but now we're seeing it happen with this coaching staff because Whitted is fantastic. I've had the chance to talk to him, and he's an incredible person, and so yeah, you just kind of see it pay it off in the recruiting.
Yeah, and that's part of their effort, right? They've been able to land a Wyatt Becker now is coming up to Utah. Obviously, you get Isaac Wilson coming to the University of Utah. Like, these are quarterbacks that are coming to a school like Utah because they want to show off their talents. They're not interested in just handing the ball off. They want to win, of course, too, but they also want to be a part of winning, and they want to showcase their skills. And you need to get them the weapons to be able to have the chance to succeed. They did that for Cam Rising this year, and we know they'll continue to add the right tight ends that are going to continue to be in place for this Utah team. And I think that's where it's really exciting for Utah in this spot, is that they have so many different receivers again, where, look, not all of these guys I just rattled off are going to work out. They never do at schools, right? I mean, you look at last year, Emory Simmons. I think it was a guy we were all really excited about, and just for whatever reason, it just didn't happen this past. So I'm part of that being the quarterback situation that Utah obviously dealt with. But Utah has so many different guys in the room now. I just don't feel like they're going to struggle to field capable receivers out there. I feel really good about the fact that, I mean, let's just go through the wide receiver depth chart of immediate impact guys. I expect Dorian Singer to be their top receiver. After Singer, I think, Money Parks is going to be in there. I think Damian Alford's a guy we're not talking about, but he had 600 yards last year at Syracuse. Like, he should be a main contributor. And Micah Pittman and Munir McClain, that's your top 5. And then Tayshawn Lyons being the immediate impact, immediate impact / upside guys. I think that's a strong 6. And I didn't even mention Brant Keithy. Like, how often have we talked about the Utah passing game? And we usually only get to 1 or 2 receivers. And then it's like, well, at least we got the tight end to bail us out. Like, if Brant Keithy's held in check for a game, I feel like these receivers can still take over and Utah can move the ball through the air.
Absolutely. The weapons are there. The weapons are there to be utilized. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how this Utah offense shapes up this year and how they're utilized. And look, the names you just rattled off, man, just get me excited because we have a lot of depth in this wide receiver room now. There was questions for me, going into spring ball, there was questions for me about the wide receiver room, but with the transfers and with the commitments, right, it's looking more and more deep, and I love to see that.
You love to see it. I love to see it too. This Utah wide receiver room feels like it's extremely strong. And once again, Tavian McNair is coming to Utah. This feels like a really strong get for the program. 3-star wide receiver, 6'3", 180 pounds, but flashed some nice things on tape and still has this whole senior year to be able to put some things together too. So good get for Utah. Someone's been up to summer on the visits. Coach Whitt had locked him in, and now he officially commits to Utah. So it's a great work by the Utah recruiting staff and Coach Whitted and Ludwig, Kyle Whittingham, whoever was involved to land the first wide receiver of the class of 2025. And once again, fingers crossed for Jerome Miles. So hopefully not the last. Talking about wide receivers that Utah lands gets me in a good mood, Alex. But what does not get me in a good mood is talking about negative comments on this show and negative comments relating to Utah. And that is what happened over the weekend. Most of the time, we don't talk about these things on this show. I think only once or twice have I ever talked about something that has come from BYU Sports Nation. And I don't look, this is Locked On Utes, right? They cover BYU. Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I watch a ton of their content. They probably have no idea who in the world JT Wistricll is. I wouldn't, like I said, I mean, literally it doesn't have it where our worlds don't intersect at all. But this comment did cross my mind, and I am going to bring it up because I just don't like it at all, I'm going to be honest. So BYU Sports Nation, Spencer and Linton said on a show that if Utah wins the Big 12, it's not a big deal because they are expected to. And even in the way Spencer was talking about it, I could tell he was talking about how, some Utah fans have been obnoxious on social media. And I think that's fair, right? Some of us have gone far with our excitement of Utah being in the Big 12. And some people get annoyed when some people get annoyed just when I say that Utah should be the favorite and I expect them to win the Big 12. But even when I say I expect them to, I think that's just so disingenuous. Like, it's incredibly hard to win a conference when it's in your first year of joining said conference, when you are taking on still really strong programs. Like, I know they missed Kansas and Kansas State, but I just feel like it's so easy to say oh, they were expected to win, so it's not impressive. But when Georgia wins the SEC, it's still hey, they had to get through Alabama, Ole Miss like that. We still view it as impressive. And that's also a different standard, Georgia versus the Utah standard. Because Georgia's done. They've won national championship. They've set that bar so high for themselves. Yes, Utah won 2 Pac-12 championships, but they've never run a Big 12 championship, and they're not of the level of every year we expect them to make the college football playoffs. So anytime they win the conference, it's a significant thing. There are still strong programs in the Big 12. Yes, Utah's schedule is easier, and they should, once again, be able to get through it relatively unscathed, and I expect them to win the conference. But to say it wouldn't be impressive or not a big deal, since they're expected to win, I just think discredits the players, the coaches, and the team for how difficult it is to win a conference.
Absolutely, man. And I think I love it. I love this comment because it just makes me excited for that Holy War game, right?
Yeah.
In conference. It's the first time since Mountain West play where we are playing BYU in a conference game. And it just makes me more and more excited to kind of revive the rivalry. But I 100% agree with you, man. There's no need to discredit even if they are expected, there's no need to discredit the work of the program. There's no need to discredit, what we hope is going to transpire for the Utes this season. And look, it's going to be incredibly difficult because it is the first year in the conference.
Yeah. It's extremely challenging. It's never been done where you come in right away and you win your conference, as far as I can remember. Now, this is more of a lateral move, right? But it's still like it'd be incredibly difficult. And I'd give major props to Utah if they are able to pay off, even though I think they will. I've said before, I think they'll win the Big 12, but I just don't, they acting like it's going to be easy. And even in the previews I do, where I talk about like, oh, I think Utah will go 11-1, or I think I've said 10-2 at times in the past, even like that. Like there are multiple games on their schedules where I'm like, oh, this could be a loss for Utah. I think they're going to win, which is a reasonable thing to think. And once again, just it's a lot hard. It's a lot easier said than done winning a conference. Last thing he said that I wanted to get to at the very end, he said, if they don't win the conference, they will never live it down. Please, if you guys can remember without looking up, like, please give me examples of all the past like teams that were favored to win their conference and didn't, and then never lived it down as a program. It just doesn't exist. Like, no, this is where we enjoy preseason rankings. It's fun content. It was crafted by the Big 12 media, which is something like we enjoy seeing what the other Big 12 media members put together and how they evaluate Utah. But there are so many crazy things that play out over a college football season. And there are also so many college football seasons that just in general that we don't remember preseason rankings a few years from now. Like, I just don't remember. I'm sure USC was favored to win the Pac-12 a couple of years ago, right? Like USC has had trouble living down some of their disappointing losses, but I don't think anyone looks at it under Lincoln Riley and go like, oh, they didn't justify being ranked number one in the Pac-12 media poll. Like, that's just not something. It's something we say, Alex. So I just think to act like Utah will never live it down because they didn't live up to the expectations of some beat writers or dudes who just host a podcast like me when I say it, I just think is ridiculous.
I think they'll live it down eventually, but obviously, with the high expectations, Utah doesn't achieve what they want to achieve. We're going to hear about it, but I guarantee you, come next year, when we're in this position where the new Big 12 media polls come out, we're not going to remember.
No.
We're not.
I don't remember the Pac-12 last year. I don't think Utah was favored even coming into it. Maybe they were. We don't remember when that happens because it's fun to talk about when it happens, but it's a bunch of media members, opinions like that, and it's just an opinion like that too. That's where I appreciate all of you checking out and tuning this show for my opinion like that. I get a ton of my opinions wrong too. So that's where I think that we can't get all swept up in like they'll never live it down. Most of people will not remember this a year from now. Maybe we will just because of this content and like we were talking about it already more than we have been. But also 365 is a lot of days in a year, and a lot tends to get forgotten in that time span. I assume this will be one of them. But that is going to do it for our show today. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Big 12 Media Days more. Alex, always great having you on, my man. Great stuff. Tell everyone what you got going on, where they can follow you at.
Absolutely, yeah. This week we got Big 12 media stuff going on with KSL, so make sure to go follow KSL to stay up to date with all the Big 12 coverage that we're going to have. You can also find that at that little below me right there at Napoles Alex, and then just getting ready for the crazy week that we're about to have.
I know we're getting Utah Media Days are here. It means we're getting closer to the season. We'll be back tomorrow, officially previewing Media Day on the day itself. Thank you guys for hanging with us on this Monday. Alex, appreciate you stopping by. That's going to do it for our show today, but we'll be back with you tomorrow previewing Big 12 Media Days.